The air was unusually heavy inside the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem. Shadows from the olive trees outside danced across the marble floor as Benjamin Netanyahu paced back and forth, gripping a classified intelligence report in one hand and his phone in the other. A message blinked on the screen from Washington. Trump to announce unilateral policy shift. 2 hours. He muttered, "Not again." The former president, Donald J. Trump, once hailed as Israel's most steadfast ally, had become unpredictable. Their once ironclad friendship, sealed with photo ops, military aid, and diplomatic winks, was now riddled with quiet doubts. Netanyahu could no longer tell whether Trump was acting out of strategy, spite, or something else entirely. 2 hours later, the press room in Mar-a-Lago buzzed with anticipation. Flanked by American flags and his loyal advisers, Trump leaned into the podium. "America first," he thundered, "means America doesn't fight anyone's wars but her own. Effective immediately, I am suspending all future arms deliveries to any foreign nation, including Israel." Silence. No reporter moved. Then the room erupted. Questions shouted. Flashes popped. But Trump was already walking away, not taking a single question. The message wasn't subtle, and in Tel Aviv, it hit like a seismic wave. Netanyahu turned on the flat screen, watched in silence, then slowly reached for his press secretary. "Draft a statement. Keep it diplomatic, but make sure the world hears what I'm saying between the lines." Hours later, an official release from Israel stated, "Long-standing friendships are built on trust and mutual respect. If one side forgets that, history has shown the other will remember." Behind the scenes, Israeli generals scrambled to assess the national security implications, while diplomats sent urgent feelers to European and Gulf allies. Was this the end of a historic alliance, or just one of Trump's theatrical tantrums? What nobody expected was that this rupture would not only redefine Middle Eastern strategy, but unravel global alliances that had stood for decades. And it had only just begun. While cable news in the U.S. buzzed with debates over Trump's latest declaration, behind closed doors, chaos was brewing in diplomatic circles. In Washington, D.C., the State Department held an emergency briefing. Only half the chairs were filled, and no one had a clear answer. Trump's closest advisers tried to spin the announcement. "He's just pivoting strategy," one aide told reporters. "This isn't anti-Israel, it's pro-America." But the facade was cracking. Intelligence memos leaked to key Senate members revealed that Trump's shift wasn't spontaneous. It had been in the works for months. In Tel Aviv, Netanyahu stood in the Situation Room with Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and Mossad's director. Satellite maps glowed red with new threats: Hezbollah movements in the north, Iranian cyber infiltration attempts in the south. For years, Israel had relied on the iron wall of U.S. support, diplomatically, economically, militarily. Now, it felt like standing in a sandstorm with no shelter. "We've been reduced to a pawn," Gallant said bitterly. Netanyahu didn't respond immediately. His eyes were fixed on a small framed photo behind his desk, a handshake between him and Trump at the White House in 2019. He turned and said, "He thinks we're dispensable." But Netanyahu wasn't ready to be discarded. The next morning, a surprise video surfaced online. Netanyahu, standing before the Western Wall, addressed the world directly. His voice was measured, but his words cut deep. Israel's friendship with the United States has always been built on shared values and trust. If those values are now negotiable, then we must ask, was the friendship ever real? Social media exploded. The clip was shared by millions within hours. Hashtags like #Netanyahu Unfiltered and number sign Trump dumps Israel trended worldwide. Back in Mar-a-Lago, Trump was unfazed. "I built peace deals they said were impossible," he tweeted. "If Israel can't handle a little tough love, maybe they're not as strong as they claim." But under his bravado, even some of Trump's inner circle began to question. Had he gone too far? Across the globe, long-standing allies took notice. From Saudi Arabia to Berlin, foreign leaders reassessed where they stood in this unraveling power dynamic. It was no longer just about Israel and the U.S. It was about trust, and the message was clear. Under Trump's second act, loyalty had an expiration date. By the time the sun rose over Jerusalem, the Israeli Knesset was already in emergency session. Inside the old stone walls of the Parliament building, tension was electric. Lawmakers, usually divided across party lines, now shared one grim realization. The American alliance was fractured. Netanyahu, flanked by his intelligence chief and Minister of Foreign Affairs, stood before the National Security Committee. "We're not just facing a diplomatic slight," he said firmly. "We're facing a realignment of global power." Across the ocean, in Washington, D.C., Trump's inner circle gathered for an off-the-books strategy meeting at the Hay Adams Hotel. No press, no recordings, only a dozen of his most loyal strategists and one sharply dressed emissary from Riyadh, an unmistakable signal. "Israel's been bleeding us dry for years," Trump barked. "It's time for a new deal, one that puts America first, always." But not everyone agreed. General Martin Holbrooke, a retired military advisor with strong Israeli ties, slammed his fist on the table. "You pull support now, and the vacuum will be filled. By China, by Russia, even by Iran. You think they won't take that opening?" Trump leaned back, a smile creeping across his face. "Then let's see how much they really need us." Meanwhile, the global press latched onto every word, every silence. European allies were stunned, unsure whether to side with tradition or hedge their bets in this new geopolitical poker game. In the streets of Tel Aviv, citizens gathered in protest. Placards read, "Betrayed by America." "Friends don't ghost friends." A peace deal signed in vanishing ink. Yet amidst the outrage, something else stirred. Resilience. A prominent Israeli tech CEO, Tamar Goldstein, gave a surprise interview. "Maybe it's time Israel becomes the innovator of its own future, without needing a political babysitter." Her words caught fire. Young entrepreneurs, digital defense experts, and economists began flooding forums with new proposals for economic independence and regional strategy. In an underground command center near Haifa, Netanyahu met with AI and defense researchers. The topic? Operation Barak, a top-secret program meant to protect Israel's technological sovereignty in case of a full U.S. pullout. Back in Florida, Trump hosted a dinner for media elites. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed. But in a moment off mic, one reporter caught a glimpse of uncertainty in his eyes. The question was no longer whether the alliance could be repaired. It was whether either side still wanted to. 3 days after Netanyahu's explosive remarks, a classified intelligence briefing was leaked to The Atlantic. The document, stamped eyes only, contained cables between U.S. defense officials and Israeli operatives discussing advanced missile coordination, shared AI defense systems, and a now-suspended program known only as ArcNet. The leak was traced back to someone close to Trump's orbit, but not even the NSA could confirm who hit send. Within hours, global media turned the leak into a firestorm. "Was Trump intentionally sabotaging a key ally?" asked CNN. "Is Israel preparing for total decoupling from American security?" asked The Guardian. Meanwhile, in a shadowy corner of Tel Aviv, Mossad Director Eli Dagan met privately with Netanyahu. "We have 2 months," he whispered, sliding a coded file across the table. "After that, China offers a defense package. All they want in return is us." Netanyahu didn't respond. He simply stared at the small black box in front of him, the same device used years earlier during covert U.S. Israel quantum comms development. Old tools, new wars. In Mar-a-Lago, Trump was hosting a closed-door meeting with venture capitalists and Saudi diplomats. "The future," he declared, "is a triangle: Washington, Riyadh, and Silicon Valley. Anyone outside that triangle gets left behind." But his rhetoric wasn't landing as smoothly as he'd hoped. Evangelical leaders, once loyal to Trump due to his strong support for Israel, began to express discomfort. One mega-church pastor tweeted, "We were promised strength, not betrayal. Genesis 12:3 still stands. I will bless those who bless you." Netanyahu, aware of Trump's eroding base, took a calculated step. He arranged for a pre-recorded message to air on 60 Minutes. "This is not a breakup. This is a reckoning. If friendship is conditional, then perhaps it was never friendship at all." That single clip went viral within hours, with over 100 million views on X and TikTok. It was translated into 14 languages, and political influencers on both sides of the spectrum dissected its every pause and expression. Behind the scenes, U.S. military officials scrambled to reassess active joint operations. One memo revealed concerns that Israeli cyber teams had already begun isolating key access points from American servers. "If they're going dark," a Pentagon official warned, "we'll be flying blind." And in a quiet moment, far from the cameras, Netanyahu looked out the window of his war room. A storm was coming, not of bombs or bullets, but of silence, withheld intelligence, and ghosted phone calls. He whispered, "They think we're alone. Let them." The White House press room was packed wall to wall. The energy wasn't excitement, it was tension, the kind that made headlines before statements were even spoken. When the press secretary finally stepped up, she looked more like a chess player than a messenger. "The president supports ongoing diplomatic dialogue between all allies. However, no nation, no matter how historic the partnership, is exempt from reassessment." It wasn't a denial, it wasn't a confirmation, but, in the language of diplomacy, it was a thunderclap. Netanyahu had been watching the statement live from the Situation Command Room in Jerusalem. He leaned back, folded his arms, and gave a wry smile. "He's not just backing off," he muttered. "He's rewriting the map." Meanwhile, Trump was preparing for an unsanctioned broadcast, his own live-streamed town hall, unfiltered, unscripted. "Tonight," he told his advisers, "I remind the world who calls the shots." The broadcast opened with soaring music and an American flag waving behind him. Then Trump appeared, leaning forward at his desk like a general at war. "Israel has been our greatest friend, until its leadership forgot that. I made Jerusalem the capital. I did more for that nation than any president in history. And how do they thank me? With threats, with ultimatums. That's not loyalty. That's arrogance." The internet exploded. "I done Trump is right" and "Bibi Strong" trended simultaneously on X. Influencers picked sides. Pro-Israel and pro-America camps fractured into narrower battlegrounds. TikTok creators reenacted both leaders' speeches with satire and seriousness alike. But behind the viral noise, something deeper was unraveling. The Pentagon received a quiet update from CENTCOM. Israeli airspace coordination had been partially suspended. Aerial routes over key surveillance corridors were being rerouted, without prior notice. This wasn't miscommunication. It was a message. At the same time, Israel's cybersecurity ministry initiated Iron Line, a classified protocol to firewall its national defense databases from all foreign entities, including long-standing U.S. intel portals. Netanyahu's closest aide, Shira Tal, warned him, "If you flip this switch, there's no walking it back. This isn't just policy anymore. This is philosophy." But Netanyahu didn't blink. "They broke the covenant first. I'm just acknowledging it's broken." In Miami, Trump's campaign strategist received a call from a well-known Wall Street financier. "If Bibi goes to Beijing," the voice said, "you'll lose Florida's Jewish vote overnight." Trump, when told of the risk, shrugged. Votes come and go. Legacy stays. Meanwhile, in a hidden underground lab in the Negev desert, an Israeli tech team activated a classified prototype, a next-gen satellite relay developed during Trump's administration. It was now solely under Netanyahu's command. The alliance wasn't dying with a bang. It was bleeding, slowly and silently. And somewhere, in the quiet hum of encrypted transmissions, new lines of loyalty were already being drawn. Tel Aviv's morning broke not with sun, but with screens, glowing red from flashing alerts. Israeli Defense Command had detected unusual satellite pings near its Mediterranean coast. Not hostile, but familiar, American. Within minutes, Netanyahu was on a secured call with IDF generals. His voice was calm, but colder than usual. "Tell Washington nothing. If they ask, we're conducting routine satellite maintenance." Simultaneously in Washington, the Pentagon's Space Command reviewed the same anomaly. One analyst flagged the signal origin. It matched a U.S.-developed system sold exclusively to Israel during Trump's administration. Only now it was being used to monitor American drone paths over Cyprus. Trump was briefed by a retired general now moonlighting as his national security advisor. "Sir, Netanyahu just used your own tech to shadow current U.S. missions." Trump's jaw tightened. "So he thinks I'll blink first." He wouldn't. That evening, Trump posted a video on Truth Social. No advisors. No edits. Just him. "I gave Bibi the tools to protect Israel, and now he's using them to spy on America. If that's not betrayal, I don't know what is." The clip went viral in under an hour. Meanwhile, Netanyahu summoned Israel's National Security Council. On the agenda, Operation Olive Drift, a long-stalled trade negotiation initiative with China, previously shelved out of respect for the U.S. But now it was a weapon. "If Trump's America isolates us," Netanyahu said, "we won't sit still. We pivot." And pivot they did. Within 48 hours, a senior Chinese diplomat was spotted in Tel Aviv under heavy security. Rumors of a multi-billion-dollar AI defense research deal began leaking. The symbolism was louder than any press release. Back in Florida, Trump advisors were alarmed. A Paki donor with deep ties to the defense sector warned, "China wants that Israeli brainpower. If they get it, it's a game-changer for them and a middle finger to us." Trump's response was characteristically blunt. "Let Bibi sell his soul. I'll still win without him." But he knew it wasn't that simple. In Jerusalem, Netanyahu recorded his own message. This one not for the public, but for classified diplomatic channels. It was encrypted, but the message was unmistakable. "We are not enemies of America, but we are not pawns either. If alliances require blind obedience, then they were never alliances at all." The world began to shift uneasily. NATO ambassadors held emergency briefings. European leaders canceled summer holidays. And in every newsroom on the planet, one question echoed louder by the hour. Was this the end of the Western order as we knew it? In Riyadh, the Saudi royal court was restless. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had been watching the unraveling of the Trump-Netanyahu axis with both caution and opportunity. If there was ever a moment to recalibrate Middle Eastern power dynamics, this was it. When elephants fight, he told his closest advisers, the grass suffers unless it becomes steel. Within hours, Saudi intelligence proposed a strategic summit, one that would include Gulf leaders, Israeli observers, and covert Chinese advisers. The objective? To reshape the region's defense and data alliances, excluding both the U.S. and Russia. A neutral bloc born not out of ideology, but out of survival. Netanyahu, recognizing the weight of such a pivot, authorized his team to attend in silence. "We don't speak," he instructed. "We listen, and we learn who still wants to be at the table." Meanwhile, Trump's camp was in full counterattack mode. His inner circle launched a targeted media campaign painting Netanyahu as an opportunist betraying American trust. Old photos of their past unity flashed across Fox, Truth Social, and independent networks with the headline, "From Ally to Adversary, Bibi's Fall from Grace." But Netanyahu didn't flinch. In Jerusalem, he summoned the ghost of David Ben-Gurion in his rhetoric. "We have survived without kings. We will survive without Trump." The statement wasn't public, but leaked within the hour. It trended globally. Trump fired back with a midnight post. "Bibi forgot who made him relevant again. Israel was invisible before me. Now he bites the hand that fed him?" Pathetic. But what neither man saw coming was the silent third party, Beijing. In an unprecedented move, China's foreign minister offered to mediate a trilateral dialogue between Israel, Palestine, and Saudi Arabia, under the banner of post-American peace. It was radical, risky, and yet oddly timely. Analysts in D.C. were stunned. For decades, the U.S. had positioned itself as the only credible peace broker in the region. Now, with Trump destabilizing traditional alliances, China was stepping into a role once thought impossible. Backstage, U.S. intelligence quietly tracked Netanyahu's encrypted messages. One flagged communiqué, buried deep in metadata, read, "We don't need new friends, we need options, and America no longer gives us any." That single line triggered a midnight emergency session at Langley. In the White House, silence. Trump had no seat at the intelligence table anymore. But he still had a phone, and he still had billions watching. In a dimly lit room beneath Tel Aviv's Ministry of Defense, a secure conference line buzzed to life. The screen displayed an unfamiliar sigil, not the emblem of any nation, but that of a private entity, Stratacore Technologies, an American defense contractor with deep roots in Silicon Valley and deeper ties to Trump-era military projects. A man with a crisp, untraceable accent spoke. "Prime Minister Netanyahu, we represent a consortium that believes alliances don't end. They evolve. Mr. Trump doesn't speak for all of America. Some of us still see value in strength and silence." Netanyahu said nothing, but his advisers stared at one another, unsure whether to feel intrigued or insulted. "We're offering early access to an AI-driven surveillance platform. Think Iron Dome, but for digital threats, misinformation, sabotage, even assassination plots. You'll see them before they're spoken." The offer came with strings. One of them? Denounced Chinese mediation publicly. In Mar-a-Lago, Trump received a coded update. He laughed, poured himself a Diet Coke, and leaned back. "See? They always come crawling back." But Netanyahu wasn't crawling. He was calculating. Back in Jerusalem, he requested a quiet walk with his national security advisor. No aides, no phones, just questions. Do we really want to place our future in the hands of failed American billionaires? Sir, the advisor said, Trump is no longer the billionaire you remember. He's a brand, dangerous, addictive, and unstable. Meanwhile, China's delegation extended a private invitation. Beijing, 3 days from now. Not a summit, a quiet talk. Off-grid, no cameras, no leaks, just vision. Then, a twist. Trump's most loyal Israeli ally, Minister Yair Cohen, defected. In a televised speech, he announced, "With all due respect to President Trump, Israel is not a satellite. We are not a pawn. We are a nation, and we will act in our interest." The world watched in disbelief. Formerly inseparable partners were unraveling in public. Even Vladimir Putin, typically silent, made a cryptic remark. When friends fight, enemies watch, and they wait. Trump posted within minutes, "Yair Cohen is a traitor. He never won anything without me. Ask him where the Iron Dome funding came from." Netanyahu, standing before a closed-door parliamentary session, whispered to himself, "The world's changing, and Trump is stuck in yesterday." Outside, protests ignited, some supporting Trump, some calling for Israeli independence from American politics altogether. The American-Israeli alliance wasn't dying. It was mutating. And what it became next would determine the future of the Middle East. As dawn broke over Jerusalem, the old city walls cast long shadows onto a nation in flux. What had once been whispers in back rooms now echoed through the Knesset, down every media feed, and into the anxious hearts of Israeli citizens. For the first time in decades, Israeli foreign policy wasn't shadowed by Washington. It was actively diverging from it. Benjamin Netanyahu sat at the head of the national security table, the air tense with decisions. In front of him lay 2 draft statements, one reaffirming support for the American-Israeli alliance, and another more radical, a commitment to non-alignment in future U.S. elections. The second document was unsigned, but not untouched. "Mr. Prime Minister," said his defense minister, "if you take this path, you're not just defying Trump. You're exposing Israel to a level of uncertainty we haven't faced since '73. Netanyahu stared at the papers. Then, slowly, he reached for the second. Meanwhile, at a conservative fundraiser in Arizona, Trump stood before a banner that read, "Trump never bends." He fired off yet another attack. If Netanyahu thinks he can build peace with China, good luck. I built the Abraham Accords. He's riding my coattails, folks. And now he's burning the jacket. But in the crowd, there were murmurs. Not everyone was buying it anymore. Trump's increasingly erratic tone wasn't commanding loyalty. It was demanding it. Back in Tel Aviv, street protests erupted. Not over Gaza, not over inflation, but over Trump. Supporters of the former president marched with MAGA signs alongside Israeli flags. On the opposite side, younger protesters chanted, "We are not his colony." In an emergency segment, CNN aired a live interview with General Amos Harel, retired IDF strategist. His words were chilling. The question is no longer if Israel needs Trump. It's whether Trump needs Israel as a prop in his campaign. That's a dangerous reversal of roles. Behind the scenes, Mossad received intel. Certain U.S. private defense firms were planning to apply economic pressure on Israel through cyber warfare proxies. No fingerprints, just chaos. Netanyahu knew the time for silence was over. He scheduled a global press conference. That night, standing behind a dark marble podium in Jerusalem, he addressed the world in English. Israel's alliance with the United States has always been built on mutual respect. But we are a sovereign democracy, not a political campaign accessory. Our decisions will no longer be dictated by tweets. In Florida, Trump watched with narrowed eyes. He picked up his phone. "Benny who?" he posted on Truth Social. It got 2.3 million likes in an hour. But the winds were changing, and Trump could feel the cold. The press conference rippled across the world like a seismic shock. From Washington to Riyadh, from Brussels to Beijing, governments scrambled to interpret Netanyahu's words. Was this the official end of an era, or merely a calculated move in a long, dangerous game? Inside the Situation Room, U.S. officials debated how to respond. President Harris, cautious but firm, declined to comment on Trump's outbursts, but stated that Israel remains a critical ally, regardless of political personalities. Yet the truth was undeniable. Trump had personalized diplomacy so thoroughly that his falling out with Netanyahu was no longer just a rift between men. It was a fault line between global ideologies. In the days that followed, the fallout grew stranger. A leaked email from a senior Trump advisor described the Israeli PM as a globalist turncoat. Israeli satire shows fired back, painting Trump as a messianic salesman with a megaphone and no map. Meanwhile, Netanyahu convened a confidential summit with moderate Arab leaders. For the first time since the Abraham Accords, they met without direct American presence. And for the first time, they listened to Israel's proposals, not as a U.S. proxy, but as an independent player. Trump wanted to use Israel as a stage prop, said one Saudi diplomat privately. Now, perhaps, it becomes a voice. Trump wasn't done. He announced a rally in Miami, calling it Truth and Loyalty, the Real Alliance. The crowd was massive, but analysts noticed a change. More national flags, fewer Israeli ones. In subtle but significant ways, the base was shifting, and so was Netanyahu. He ordered a new strategic doctrine drafted, one that no longer placed exclusive value on America First diplomacy, one that recognized the multipolar world already forming, a doctrine that began with a sentence no Israeli official had dared to write since 1967. Israel's security shall not be dependent upon any single foreign leader, however historically significant. By the end of the week, the Knesset voted 56-44 to adopt the framework. For Trump, the sting was personal. But for Netanyahu, ever the chess player, this wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. And for the world watching, it was about something deeper. The myth of unshakable alliances had been shattered. From now on, trust would be earned, not assumed. And Trump, for all his bravado, had just learned that even kings without crowns can be dethroned. In a world driven by optics and algorithms, one of the oldest partnerships on the planet has just rewritten its terms. Netanyahu's bold stand against Trump wasn't just political theater. It was a sign that even the deepest alliances must evolve or break. When leaders stop acting like allies and start behaving like adversaries, the world doesn't just shift. It rewrites its history. And in this chapter, the pen is in Netanyahu's hand.